Hey, and welcome to my first real build video. In this video, I am going to sort of walk you through the process of building a small apothecary style cabinet. It's just going to have 3 drawers, as you've probably seen in the thumbnail. It's just 2 boards, a 1x5 and a 1x4 and a 1x6. Just common boards from the big orange store, probably 15 bucks in total. And I got the bottoms of the drawers from an old IKEA dresser that I found on the side of the street. So hopefully you enjoy watching. I'll kind of talk through some of what I'm doing, some of the mistakes I've made. So right here you can see I'm cutting the groove for the dado so that the kind of drawer separators can fit in, and that'll make a really strong joint. So just cutting out a bunch of perfs with the circular saw, and then you can just kind of break away what's left and chisel out to the bottom so that you get a nice tight fit. So here I'm sort of test fitting everything. And the goal of this project was to try out a few different types of joinery. So you can see I've cut the grooves, putting those together. I'm going to hold the outside together with dowels and glue. And then you'll see later on the drawers are going to be held together with dovetails. And I made a huge mistake with the dovetails. But actually I ended up thinking it looked kind of better with the mistake, but I'll explain that. So there was a lot of sanding. I didn't film most of it. I used a random orbital sander for most of it. Did a little bit by hand. Here's another point where I made a big mistake. Just using a Dremel drill press, that was all fine. But the piece that I'm drilling in right here was not supposed to have holes on the ends. It's the middle piece. I was thinking it was the top piece, so it should only have holes in the dado. So I'm drilling them out bigger. I used the drill press first just to make sure I got a good straight hole, which is really important with dowel joinery. But these 3 holes and the 3 holes on the other side, I'm going to just fill later. Those 2 in the middle are correct. And here I am filling in those holes because it's the middle piece, shouldn't have holes on the sides. But it was just more woodworking, so can't really complain. Sanding that off. I'm using Elmer's glue because I ran out of wood glue, and Elmer's glue is almost the same. Here's the actual dowel joinery. You just drill through both pieces and take a dowel, put some glue on the dowel and some glue in the hole, and place that in there. And you can see I have clamps because things weren't lining up 100% perfectly, but you just clamp it the way it should be and put the dowels in, and it'll dry correctly. Here's my measurements for the drawer pieces. Starting to focus on the drawers. This was all 1x4 material. And here what I'm doing is cutting out a little piece that will drop into my workbench and hold those drawer pieces that I just cut so that I can plane them down, because I measured, pretty close with the outside, the actual cabinet, but the drawers are going to be a little bit higher because I want them to fit tightly. And so I made this little piece that I can then butt the drawer pieces up against and plane down. I think that's coming up in one of the next shots. This was not a great design, to be honest. I could have done a much better job. But here you can see I'm trying all the drawer pieces and trying to plane them down. That was not a good fit with the little tool that I made, so I need to stack it on top of something else so I can get a good shaving off there. I'm kind of still learning how to use planes, but they're definitely useful tools. You can get a nice finish, actually better than a sanded finish if you have a good sharp blade. So there's all the pieces fit and ready to cut. There's Zoe having a great time outside. And here I start working on the dovetails, which if you want to learn how to do dovetails, you should not try to learn anything from this video, because even though I have a good understanding, I'm just simply not patient enough to do them right. But here I am clamping pieces down to my dining room table and making the most of what I have. So there's the dovetails drawn out, and using a knife here to kind of score the top. You want to get as straight of a line as possible on the top of the dovetail. And this is where I just was entirely impatient. Using a coping saw is really a terrible idea for cutting downward on the dovetails. Later on for the pins, I'm going to use a hacksaw, which is also a terrible idea. I should just buy a dovetail saw. But I mean, this is a little bit of like, use what you have, get into woodworking on a budget. You can do it with a coping saw. It's not going to look great, it's not going to be tight, but I'm happy with the finished product. So here's all the tails cut. And now I'll move on to cutting the pins. You're basically just cutting the opposite. Again, there's tons of videos out there to learn how to do dovetails. I would not recommend trying to learn from this video. There's a lot of other good options. And then I'll just go in with the coping saw, clear out that material. Definitely not the cleanest cuts, but usable. Ideally, you'd come back here with a chisel and cut right to the line, but I am just not patient enough for that. So there's all my tails and pins cut, and I'm going to just run the circular saw up with a shallow cut 2 or 3 times to make clearance for the bottom of the drawer to fit in. I'm going to cut out those bottoms. Like I said, this is a drawer bottom from a free IKEA dresser that I found on the side of the street, and I'm trying to use up the scrap wood from. I'll just cut those out. It's sort of like a hard cardboard material. I don't know if it's really MDF, like a medium density fiberboard. White on the bottom and brown on top, which doesn't quite match the color scheme of this cabinet, but that's okay. And here I am gluing up a drawer. So at this point I had done a lot of cleanup on the dovetails and the drawers. I had test fit everything to make sure that it all actually was going to go together. Had to make a lot of adjustments. I just film all that because it was pretty boring. Here's everything. This is actually all just test fit too. This was before I glued in the bottoms. But this was a point where I was starting to feel pretty accomplished, pretty happy with the way things were coming out. And now I'm gonna stain everything. So everything's glued up, everything fits. And I'm going in with, I think it's called Special Walnut from Minwax. Just applying with a paper towel. I tend to be kind of stingy with stain, and I think you're really supposed to kind of lather it on there and then wipe it off later on, but there it is stained. Overall, I like the way it looks. I'm pretty happy with it. And at this point, I'm going to make some drawer pulls. So I kind of went back and forth if I wanted to make something out of oak or pine or something I already had. This is some leftover steel from an end table that I had made and welded together, and so I'm just gonna cut off some angles with an angle grinder, and it sort of gives like a dovetail look, which, like I said, I actually oriented the dovetails incorrectly in the top drawers, but this sort of complements that look of the 45 degrees on each side. So just cleaning up the sharp edges, and here I'm punching dimples for drilling holes for actually mounting the handles on the cabinet, and drilling those out. A little bit bigger hole in the front so that I can fit a screwdriver in, and then a little bit smaller in the back. You can see in that top right one that has the 2 holes. All 3 of them had the 2 holes, but you can see it in that one. And here's the finished product. So I did paint the handles, or the drawer pulls, with a black Rust-Oleum spray paint, and I ended up putting a couple coats of spray lacquer on the whole cabinet. But pretty happy with it. You can see those dovetails are oriented wrong, but they work. So thanks for watching.